Welcome to the final episode of our SwiftData exploration, Add, Delete, Modify. We've been working with a SwiftData model that looks something like this. We have a meeting that takes place in a location, but every location might have one or more meetings. Every meeting might have one or more employees, and every employee might have one or more meetings. A couple of episodes ago, we created an in-memory store that we used in previews. So we created our preview container by assigning a schema, specified that it was in memory, and from those two, we created our container, added sample data, and then that was our preview container. So then we queried the sample data and displayed it in previews. And the way we got it into our preview presenter was we used the model container modifier and passed in the preview container. And then we could use query to fetch data. And in this case, we looked for all of the meetings and sorted them by the reason. And our results look something like this. The way we got that presentation was we used a standard list. In this case, I'm going to use for each, which we didn't do before. And also I've added a special type meeting view so we didn't have to look at all the presentation code. Let's introduce an edit button, and there's nothing SwiftData-ish about this. In the toolbar, we add a toolbar item in the top bar leading position, and it's an edit button. To actually perform the delete, we need to access the context. The context is our scratch pad. And so we delete items from the context, and then we save the context. I have an asterisk here because there's something special that happens with SwiftData. The context is in the environment for previews, but it's not for our actual app. So let's take a moment and add the container context to the environment in our actual app. So we open up My App, import SwiftData, and use that same model container modifier and specify that it's for meeting.self. And you say, wait a minute, what about employee and location? And because this is a connected graph, because the model is so simple, we can just specify meeting.self, and the rest of the connected relationships will imply the other bits are represented as well. In fact, the model container modifier puts both the container and the context into the environment. And so we can pull the context from the environment in our content view. From the environment, we specify the key path model context, and we'll store that in private var context. So now we're ready to delete. Implement onDelete after the for each. You'll get an index set of all the elements that are selected to delete. There will only be one. And so let's if let and get the first element, and then tell the context to delete that first element. And that's it. Say, wait a minute, Daniel, you said we have to save. Well, by default, autosave is on. And so here's our edit button. We tap it. We get these deletes, we select one of these items to delete, and when we hit the delete button, that's enough to get the autosave going. It's responding to something that happened in the interface. So that's delete. Let's go on to add. We'll add a second toolbar item, this one in the top bar trailing position. It'll be a button with the plus label, and the action will be context, insert a new meeting, and I've created this method demo data just to give us a sample meeting that we can display. Again, that's it. The autosave takes place automatically, and so we tap the plus button, and automatically we see another element that's been added, and we know it's one of these demo data methods because it says unknown TBA is the location. And that leaves updating. And so if we go back to our content view and we look at the list, we're going to navigate somewhere, and we wrap our meeting view in a navigation link and use the new value type, and then explicitly specify that if we switch on the meeting that's been selected, then we'll go to the meeting modifier for that specific meeting. The meeting modifier will accept the meeting as we expect, and we'll also have this private string reason that we'll use with our text field. To implement the view, we have our text field, which will store the reason, and it's bound to that string that we added. When our meeting modifier appears, we'll populate the text field with meeting.reason. When the user enters a new reason and taps return, we'll call onSubmit, and that will set meeting.reason to equal reason. But what if the user doesn't tap return? They just hit the back button after they've entered it, so we'll add onDisappear as well. And again, that's it. Add, delete, and modify are pretty simple with SwiftData. And that's the end of our introduction to SwiftData. Now, can it get more complicated? Of course. We didn't talk about anything that wasn't on the main thread, for example. We didn't have very complicated relationships, but this was just an introduction.